All right, in the studio with us right now, honored to have I've started to see a little bit of this work. I haven't seen the entire exhibit yet, but this is something that I think we talked about this at the very top of the show. As Rich pointed out, people line up in this town for deep dish pizza and popcorn.
And cupcakes.
And cupcakes.
This is something they should be lining up for.
Yes. Because starting later this week, I believe on Friday, open to the public at the Pritzker Military Museum and Library here in Chicago, I'll get you details on how you get there and tickets and everything, is a photography exhibit that is going to go up because a photographer was given unfettered access to Navy SEALs during their deployment to their families stateside when they were here, including stuff from training and most heartbreakingly also from funerals. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie Freed Parencio is here, along with a retired Navy SEAL, Mike Martin. And Stephanie, let's start with how it was that you got started in this project. What drew you to it?
I met a man at a dinner party probably in 1999 who said that he was a U.S. Navy SEAL. And at the time, I was a talent agent. And so my only exposure to the SEAL community was through the film world. Mm-hmm. And when I met him...
Talking about that Charlie Sheen movie?
Yes,
Because there have been better ones since then.
No,
Stephanie.
the Charlie Sheen movie that then went to the G.I. Jane Demi Moore movie. Sure. And through the 2-year process after meeting Robert S. Howard, who is a 3-star Vice Admiral right now, or retired, I got to know him and some of the guys over the 2-year period, and I realized that these guys are nothing what these movies portray these men as. And so it was just something that was always in the back of my head.
Where did you notice the difference was? Because this is an amazing observation, because I've spent some time with them over the years, guys who've come out and on for different charities and boards. What was your observation of the difference?
Well, the difference is that they're really smart men, and they have a calling in their life. And I just was really tired of seeing them portrayed as these, I hate to say it, like these meatheads, like these these big football players or...
That's exactly the observation, is that these guys are, they're always portrayed as like a Schwarzenegger-esque type, never having sleeves, no matter what they're doing.
Yeah, unthinking, robotic, and not really, these great, smart, complex individuals. I think that's what we see
the bodybuilders, and that you see down at the beach all the time.
Right, and there's no question that they have to have this incredible physical capability, right? Because they have to be very, very strong, and endurance is a big part of the training program for these guys.
Well, and part of that is more than just their physical strength, and I'm sure Mike Martin can talk more about that, but it's their mind over the matter. I mean, you have to, there's a certain way you have to be, and it's just not about the physical part. It's about, can you mentally get yourself to that place where you are not going to take no for an answer, that you're going to push your body further than it's ever been pushed, that you are not going to have anyone tell you that you cannot do something. I think it's pretty extraordinary.
And let's talk a little bit of that. Mike, how many years were you in?
Sure. Hey, thanks, Ro. I was in for 10 years, active duty, and then I got out in 2006. So I got in right during what we call kind of the Cold War period, post-Cold War, pre-9/11 period, and then I stayed 5 years after that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting. We should talk a little bit about what she just said, because it is an endurance thing, and I think movies like Zero Dark 30 portray these teams a little bit more accurately than the ones earlier, the big action ones where you're going in. These guys are, because in Navy SEALs it's considered sea, air, land, right? That they may be fighting anywhere, coming out of anywhere, just arising out of the surf, and there's so much more head game in this, isn't there, than just the physical. Obviously, you have to be able to get in and get out of a place, but you got to be very, very smart when you're in there.
No, totally. I mean, it's they say it is 90% mental, 10% physical. I mean, the guys that pass the standards, the physical standards to make it through or make it to SEAL training aren't necessarily the right guys that will actually make it through training. Many times guys would say, "Hey, how come you're not bigger?" And I said, "Actually,
Isn't that funny?
I'm the your average SEAL is probably 5'10", 185 pounds, strong, and he'll do anything, go anywhere, do anything. And when you think about it, who do you want when you open a door and you got bullets flying through your head? Most people will run away from that door. The SEAL is the one that goes in that door, and he's got 3 guys right behind him. And so when you think about the mindset of a person that would do that would risk their lives for their teammate or their buddy, in support of their country, it's a different person. And people have been trying to study, what is it that makes a guy make it through SEAL training or versus a guy that decides to quit? And they've been trying to quantify it for years, and they just can't do it. It's just just the ability not to quit.
Yeah. There is something, too, that is unique about this particular exhibit, because you, for the first time, Stephanie, were given access to the families and to sort of the grander story of, because the sacrifice, and I think we've gotten to understand and appreciate this in the post 9/11 world, that families, especially for weekend, they used to be called weekend warriors. It's certainly a lot more than that for guard and reservists who come and go. But now the SEAL families, the Special Forces families, really are of a different makeup, because they know what their family members. They know what the risk involved is, but they don't really know where they are or what they're doing. So it's a level of stress, and they're not in communication like so many other military families can be when their family members deployed. You can Skype. There's ways to do this. SEAL team members, anybody in Special Forces, you don't know for sure, and so it's really wrenching to them.
Well, I think that there's so many different levels, because as Mike said, before 9/11, the SEAL families were used to a different routine. And I think after 9/11, the SEAL community was asked to go beyond their norm. And of course, because of who they are, both with the men and the families, everyone rised to that occasion. But that occasion brought tremendous sacrifice to these families. The sacrifices of deployments going for 6 months to a year. Yeah. Like you said, not having the access. Most of the women and kids that we talked to would not talk to their fathers or their husbands. They would get a phone call. They would get an email. I'm going out of range. You won't hear from me for a week or two. Wow. Or there's just so many different elements that it's like a complete disconnect. And the only connect you have is to the other families that are around you that are going through the same thing. Or you become obsessed with CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whatever news station that you watch, hoping that you're going to find some information out of maybe where your husband is and what they're doing. And
as you learned, and as we're all started to learn, sometimes there are places we had no idea even existed.
Exactly.
There's these teams are often in places that are not in the headlines. There may not be in Afghanistan or in Iraq, and all of a sudden they end up in Pakistan for something. And we'll talk a little bit about that side of the story. We're talking about an unbelievable photographic exhibit that is going to be starting, for the public at least. The public can start to see it at the Pritzker Military Museum and Library here in Chicago. For more information on that, it's pritzkermilitary.org, pritzkermilitary.org, and it's called Unspoken Sacrifice. Back right after this. Stephanie Free-Frenchio is with us. She is the artist, the photographer, who was given unfettered access to the United States Navy SEAL program, and that's his Navy SEALs program, or Underwater Demolition Team BUDS program. It comes under a number of different names, doesn't it?
Yes.
And you had, how long did you spend with them in time?
I spent from 2002 to 2005, and then spent 2 years putting the book SEAL: The Unspoken Sacrifice together with my partner Jennifer Walton.
And how many photographs are going to be on display? Pritzker Military Library and Museum and Library is going to have this. By the way, it's at 104 South Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and you can go to pritzkermilitary.org. They have all of the they'll have all the information about tickets and things like that to be able to see this. But how many are on display here in this?
There's about 90 photos that are on display.
And in the book?
And in the book, there's... Oh, I don't know, because there's probably 120 photos in the book. Yeah. But a lot of the photos that are in the exhibit are not in the book because there's a new section that's called Brotherhood and Love and Loss, which we really focused on the exhibit.
Okay, so that's really a little bit of, I mean, that's the sense of what this exhibit is about the brotherhood of it. And Mike Martin, who's a former Navy SEAL, is with us. And the interesting thing about this, as we mentioned, Lone Survivor, which is a film that is about Navy SEALs, it's a Mark Wahlberg film, very successful. It does focus on that exact issue of the brotherhood and not leaving guys behind. I know everybody in the military says that, but it's ingrained in you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only analogy is to somebody is if they played on a sport team. But the only difference is that, you know, we trained 7 days a week. We deployed. You know, we went against the opposing team for 6 to 9 months at a time. We lived together, ate together, trained together. You know, everything was pretty much 24/7. So it's that team that you might have been on, but taken to a whole different level. And it's really hard to explain, but to people outside of the Navy or the SEAL teams or the military, just say, hey, think about the best team you ever were on, and multiply that by 1,000. That's what it was like being in the teams. And you know,
how do they get that sense? How is that sense trained into you? Well, because there's always going to be guys who are competitive with each other, and it's always going to be people who may not get along. Do they choose guys who were getting along well in BUD/S training, or how do they do that?
Well, everything in training is with your team, with your boat crew, with your swim buddy. When you do a swim in the ocean, you're never by yourself. You're always with a swim buddy, and you're with him, going the 5 miles in the water. When you're doing a dive, you're connected with your swim buddy with a line. So you're never by yourself. It's not an individual program. It's a team program. When you're with your boat crew, it's your boat crew against other boat crews, and then when you're in the ocean, they call it surf torture, and they put you in the ocean in the middle of the night and have you lock arms, and you lock arms as one group. Wow. And what you do is when a guy tries to break free to quit, you grab him and you pull him right back in, and you lock your arms with his arms. And
I'd never speak to that guy again, whoever did that to me. So I don't know.
Either would I.
Yeah, I don't know how that all worked out. Well, congratulations on this. It's
Thanks.
Really fine work. It's great work, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your service specifically. If you'd
so
like
much.
more on this, SEAL, the Unspoken Sacrifice, at the Pritzker Military Museum and Library. It opens to the public on Friday, and you can go to pritzkermilitary.org. Thank you both for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
So much.